And I'm going to share my screen so I can share with you some slides that go along with it. So I was really excited to have the opportunity to share about gratitude. This is near and dear to my heart. And so I decided to title my session today, Guiding with Gratitude, but following the human potential. And I titled my session with this because I wanted to share about two what I feel are carefully interwoven foundations in the Montessori philosophy that I feel are driving points in developing children into their full potential. And so you guys know me pretty well, but I have a little backstory perhaps that I can share that'll surprise you. So we know that I teach EMEA, and most people would ask why, because I do teach from the East Coast and there's a time zone difference. But I do teach EMEA because it's what cultivates my personal gratitude. As I really enjoy how my gratitude in this work guides me in learning experiences from the children and with the children, and at the same time, guiding their learning opportunities for them. So it cultivates a large amount of gratitude, and I figured it was good to share that to start off, since our session is about gratitude. And then on the other side, a little something about me and gratitude is that this type of gratitude I experience when teaching is what I love most about education and the feeling of gratitude that I receive from it. And I've experienced gratitude on many levels throughout my educational journey. But this picture here is just a van, some might think, but this is probably one of the most very special days of gratitude because I think it was the first time as an educator that I realized my full potential or my human potential as an educator. And I was recognizing how I was guided by my gratitude with the profession to fulfill something. And the gratitude we might think of in question is written there on the van, and it is in the words service learning. And the day that I was able to purchase a van for a program that I was passionate about, to take my kids out into the world and to do things, I realized for the first time as an educator where my gratitude lies and how that led me to my full potential. And so that kind of is a little tidbit of information about me and how I'm drawn to this topic and subject. And I was drawn to Montessori because I noticed that this philosophy and education prioritized service learning, and that the philosophy gives you the freedom and the ability as an educator to be able to give back to the community and allow the children to be a part of that. So service learning has always been my passion. It really allows me to discover not only my potential I've learned, but the children to be able to discover their potential as they are guided with gratitude throughout the experiences. I came across this quote long before I found Montessori, and this is what made me really start to endeavor in this philosophy. But an education capable of saving humanity is no small undertaking. It involves the spiritual development of man, the enhancement of his values as an individual, and the preparation of young people to understand the times in which they live. And this van is my potential to save humanity. That's what I saw when I saw this van arrive for me to use for my program. And it's how I can contribute to society as well. So this quote won me over. And so for today, this van embodies the work that we're going to do together this evening. Thinking about understanding your child's human potential, modeling your human potential, and how guiding each of those is gratitude at the heart. And that will be kind of our areas of work for today. So to start off, I mentioned that children discover their human potential when they are guided by gratitude. And I thought first might be a good idea to talk about what is the human potential in children. And you can see here I have it listed as service to humanity. So again, driving back to my one passion of service learning. And so our individuality and our uniqueness is kind of what we get to present to the world as our gift of gratitude for how we can contribute. And that is exactly what human potential is for a child. It's how they are presenting themselves to the world, their uniqueness, their individuality, and how that then can contribute to the world. And it takes children time to discover that. And it takes them a journey to discover that. And it's a journey of gratitude that is a path that we get to follow. And my journey meant that I could contribute with the opportunity to take kids out into the world and learn to be a part of humanity. And children need those same experiences to be able to achieve that. So how do we as parents or even as guides facilitate these opportunities of gratitude for our children to realize that potential? And it sounds complicated and it sounds daunting, but Dr. Montessori did map out something lovely for us, and it still looks a little daunting and maybe a little bit complicated even with her map, but I think I can break it down very simple for us to take a peek at how these planes of development will help us. And that's what we are looking at here are Dr. Montessori's 4 planes of development. And these planes act as a path for us. They give us directions, almost like a GPS, on how we can follow a child through infancy to maturity. And not only that, but how we can build experiences of gratitude for them to explore throughout these planes in order for them to achieve their potential. And potential is quite ambiguous, I find, because it's not really something we can see. So it's even harder maybe on this chart, but it is evident if we kind of pick it apart. If we think about potential as what we might think about in physics, as like an energy. Potential is an energy. We can see in this chart that Dr. Montessori took the time to show us how energy works in the child's plane, and that the energy that they have is synonymous with work. And it goes a little something like this. We can see that in each plane of development, we can start with infancy and move down this line of energy. This is a developmental phase. This is our developmental phase of learning. When we go back up, our energy, and the child's energy, I should say, is now moving towards consolidating that knowledge. So a child will develop gratitude through work, and then they will consolidate their knowledge of that gratitude through work. And we can see that that energy flows through each stage of development in these 4 planes, where we're able to see it developing, and then we're able to see it coming back up, and they are contributing. The energy at the beginning of a plane of development is intense. And the children find that it tapers off as they move towards the end of a plane of development. When I say that these are very helpful for us in learning about how gratitude can be found in work, we also can see that there are triangles formed as we follow this energy. There are a lifeline here, all the way across, with these lines of energy form a triangle. The area inside of this triangle represents the work of the child. And when we think about the triangles forming the work, we can also consider the fact that these works that they contribute throughout each plane are works of gratitude, works that energize them and encourage them to grow in their human potential. So hence one needs to do work of gratitude in order to realize their potential. And guides and parents, we can capitalize on that by seeing what types of energy they're feeling and how we can build work to match that. And so when we look at our planes of development here, we get to see that below are the energies that we can follow. For example, a child in this first plane of development is very energized by sensorial work and their senses, very energized by order. And so we can find ways to present gratitude to a child where they can use their senses and they can use order in order to see and feel gratitude. We could do the same in our childhood. We could see that there are some very interesting energies or sensitivities that they may have. Morality and justice are very strong, and culture are very strong. So children are able to find gratitude and works of gratitude where they're developing it, using their morality and sense of justice, as well as culture. And then they're able to then take that same knowledge and put it together to use as a work. And we can follow this all the way through our planes of development here. And I also think it's worth mentioning that the planes allow us to see the energies, things that they're ready for and they're desiring, and then encourage us to build a work environment of gratitude so that they can work toward their human potential. And this is where opportunity for an environment of gratitude can be found, when we look at the child and what is energizing them in that moment. We also have a chance to think about potential as being synonymous with work in that once they realize this potential, it is what they can seek out in order to find gratitude as well. So finding their potential within each developmental phase allows them to then seek out gratitude in the next plane of development. So they're kind of following that through each plane as well. So they'll take that order and sense and how they feel gratitude with that. And when they move that into morality and justice or into culture, they build upon that. So just like any other material that we might find in our Montessori classroom, gratitude builds as well. When we think about gratitude, we think about the experience in a Montessori classroom, and that experience in our classroom is built upon both intellectual and spiritual potential of the children and their connections to other people through natural work. And so Dr. Montessori wanted children to understand the amount of gratitude that human beings owed to the parts of the universe and to realize that without them and their connected contributions, being interconnected as a whole, we wouldn't live. So this connection within the curriculum is very evident. Children work in each plane to make these connections very intentionally. And for example, here, children are working to connect to Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. So this is a connection of children finding and recognizing a large amount of gratitude for what they have while exploring the needs of others. So connection is a very important part of gratitude throughout the curriculum as well as the planes of development. Another great way to look at it is through the fundamental needs chart that children work. Gratitude is made more concrete through a chart or a work like this for children, as the entire curriculum is linked in many ways to represent this interconnectedness, including materials like this. They're used at different levels of sophistication for children that grow, but no matter when children look at this chart, they see interconnectedness. They see how one piece of a spiritual need relies on another, and they can make connections of gratitude between the two. So we get to see gratitude not only in the psychology piece of her planes of development, but also throughout the entire classroom, because our materials are built to show that same progression and sophistication and knowledge. And what we find is that children are asking us for directions. They're asking us for directions down this path to their human potential. And we are able to now see that energy from the planes of development and help set up an environment so that they can have experiences in seeking their human potential. And we can allow gratitude to be the work that they do to do that. And if gratitude gets to be the work, then what exactly is gratitude? Gratitude is a character strength, and it supports the most positive life experiences for children. And I think it's an interesting definition of a character strength because we can see gratitude being assimilated to things like compassion and empathy, but they actually are very different in their own ways, which we'll get into. The definition of gratitude for children centers around positive feelings and gratitude that those generate. And, those experiences in that first plane of development and moving into the second, those experiences are very sensorial and very well-lived experiences for children. So here, two children in my class were able to meet up and see each other, once virtual and then in real life. And if you think about the gratitude and the feeling from that experience in that first plane of development and into that second plane of development, it's pretty amazing to see the sensorial piece and the memory that is created here from this sense of gratitude. And this gratitude that they experience is a strength of character, which brings us to what gratitude is not. Gratitude is actually quite different than other caring emotions, like compassion and empathy. And while they do correlate, gratitude is more self-focused, which means it's something that we have to learn. It's not something innate. It's a self-focused. We learn to reflect and find gratitude and make that a practice or a daily practice. And even though it's something we learn, there's still good news. There are many ways that we can teach it and model it for children, and taking time to be able to do that and cultivate it daily is one of the greatest keys to success in gratitude and children finding that potential. Gratitude is a work, and gratitude is the concrete version of human potential. If we thought of, when we talked about human potential and we thought, well, it's kind of an abstract thought, nobody can see it. Gratitude is the concrete version of human potential. And children benefit from the work of gratitude. It's part of a positive social cycle. And so the child is able to receive gratitude for their generosity. So if they give to others, they receive the same gratitude. And they feel that positive impact on the world. And that confidence then increases their willingness to work hard and increases as they feel supported by being included in a community and because of that gratitude that they've experienced. So gratitude is work, something that they are putting that energy into from those planes of development so that they can make a positive impact. And those experiences lead up to them discovering what their human potential is, taking that concrete idea of gratitude and moving it into the abstract of who they are contributing to the world through their human potential. If we took a little bit of a closer look and we got to connect gratitude and human potential, kind of using our perspective of our planes, we might see that in the first plane, there is energy from a child in the ages between 0 to 6 with sensory and order. So what kinds of work might we give them? What kinds of work will we give them to use that energy? We're going to try to give them work that builds their capacity for self-reflection. Because as we learned, gratitude is something we need for ourselves. So we build that. So if children in this stage of development, you can also see there's a huge focus on the self and very concrete experiences. Well, we can take happy, wonderful moments and build that learning capacity to reflect on those using gratitude. In our second plane of development, we could see that the energy that they were feeling to drive the work is around culture and morality and justice. So what types of work might we give a child to build that gratitude nurtured by that energy? We would leverage the cultural capital that they have. They have this strong mental independence and intellectual independence growing, and a curiosity that we want to fulfill using that energy. So we're going to leverage that as much as possible and give them opportunities in work that does that. And we'll get into what that looks like a little bit more. In our third plane of development, we see energy coming from wanting to belong or being a part of something and from looking at role models. So they kind of shift to a more global community, but they want to do it collectively. It's more of an I am because we are mindset that they're in, which is a beautiful idea for gratitude. And so what types of work would we give a child to use that energy on? We're going to give them work that will harness that collectivism mindset that they have, works that bring them together to accomplish something, a bigger goal, where they find that same cycle of gratitude that will lead them into their purpose and what they can contribute. And I bring our fourth plane in, because while I've never taught a child in the fourth plane, it's who we are. And so one of our goals and in our meeting was not just to realize the human potential of the child, but how our human potential as the parent or as the guide is also an important part of this equation. And we know that in our maturity stages, our energy really comes from our evaluation of social policies and situations, looking at our social independence. And our personal interests and responsibilities drive much of what we do. That's what the energy is for us to find gratitude even in adulthood. So as work for us as adults, we explore and share passion projects like crazy. Things that we love to do is how we apply ourselves. And those passion projects bring us gratitude. When we're doing this work and our children are watching it, we are modeling for them that same process, how to take the energy that fuels us and apply it through a work of gratitude to grow into that human potential. And going about this work can seem intimidating because setting up an environment of gratitude with these types of works might seem like I have no idea how to do such a thing. But the good news is I have a good solution. We know what Dr. Montessori wanted them to see in that interconnectedness. And the best way to connect with people is conversation. Connection is a work of conversation. Conversation is a brain-changing power. And quality conversation, even better, with a connection, is better than the quantity and extends even greater power. And so conversation connects children to be able to develop their awareness. And what I'm saying pretty much right now is guiding with gratitude is as simple as a conversation. So those works that felt so big are not so big when we think of them in the context of the work of just a conversation. Conversation is such an important aspect of being able to connect children to their developing awareness. And so opening up the opportunity to do that is important. When we think about how we can connect through conversation, we can build learning capacity using self-reflection. We can have a conversation leveraging cultural capital. We can have a conversation harnessing collectivism and the mindset that they have. And we can have a conversation exploring and sharing passion projects. This picture on the right is a service learning adventure where there's a connection through conversation at a shelter. And this is a child who is in the third plane of development. And this is a collectivism mindset that she's in determining where can she use her contributions from what she's learned in lessons of gratitude to work in this environment to find problems and seek out the solutions. And so we have conversations that happen maybe in a volunteer or service environment, but we also have the reflective conversations after that also drive the same gratitude and work. Connecting children and conversation using gratitude is 4 easy steps. I know I froze, sorry. 4 easy steps. As children get older, you're going to notice that these steps develop with the cognitive skills. So children will more likely engage in all 4 of these as they move through those planes of development. You're probably seeing my connection. 4 planes of development, 4 parts to a cycle of a conversation seeking gratitude. And just like the Montessori materials, this concrete conversation that we can have will take them a long way in the abstract idea of finding who they are and their contributions in this world. And the cycle, like our materials, gets more sophisticated. In steps 1 and 2, you'll notice that we are just bringing a child's attention to something in their life that they can be grateful for. And then once we notice it, applying a feeling. So applying our sensory work with that. Children are able to see both of these in their first plane of development. The third part of a gratitude conversation is that we think about why we have the things that we're grateful for. So you can see there's a step up in the mental processing between I'm grateful for what I have, but I'm grateful for what I have, and maybe why might it be different than what others could have, and how does that make me feel? And then finally, the last stage is we do something about it. We do something to express the appreciation that we have for a piece of our lives by bringing our gratitude to others and our generosity to others. So we do something in return. A simple way of looking at it. We saw the first plane, and we know that they have sensory and order. To build on that, we need to use some self-reflection. So here's what that might look like. In the first plane, we could see both cycle steps 1 and 2 of a conversation. We can build the learning capacity using self-reflection to notice and feel something they're grateful for. This is a service project of basil in a hydroponic garden that I've done. And you can see that this is a sensorial experience because basil smells good. And you're picking it out of the hydroponic garden yourself. So you have touch, you have smell, you can eat it right there and have taste. This is an entire experience where gratitude of how we grow our food, how we get food to our table, and who is responsible for that. So a lesson in gratitude, but we're using our senses and our sensorial work to capitalize on that experience of gratitude. And we are using order, steps to be able to cut the basil, knowing where to cut the basil, collecting it. So we're putting a sense of order to this as well. So this small moment of gratitude is made very concrete with noticing and feeling, capitalizing on that energy of sensory work and order. Our second plane is a wonderful example of the third step in our cycle of conversation. We've seen before in our previous work that energy comes from cultural and morality and justice, and we want to leverage that. So to do so, we can use our fundamental needs, because this next step is not just asking about what the child might be grateful for, but thinking about what others might be grateful for. And is it the same or different, and how or why? And that makes the child feel a certain way. That brings that feeling of gratitude to a real spot in their hearts. And so this fundamental needs chart for the second plane child is a wonderful work to connect what they're wondering about with culture and morality and justice. And you'll see another great example of this work as we move forward. In our third plane of development, we see again that we have role models and belonging. We looked at that, and how in that third plane we want to harness the collectivism. And I'm going to pair with it that fourth plane that we're all in, how we evaluate social policy and our personal and responsibilities, and how we use that to explore and share our own passion projects. Because the third and fourth plane work really well in the final part of our conversation. When we are in the plane of development where we are looking at role models, wanting to belong, and building passion, well, we are in the phase, that final phase of a conversation, of doing something to show our generosity because we built gratitude. So this is an example of another project where all the adults are teachers who this is their passion project, letting people surf again who might have a disability or might be elderly, but they want to surf again. So these are teachers with a passion, and then they are being a role model, and they are sharing that with the students, making them a part of that gratitude. And that's harnessing that collectivism, that belonging, coming together. We are a community who cares about this. And we watch each other in our work in this community, and we watch how we are leaders. We watch how our passion guides us. And then we watch how we receive gratitude, and we also give gratitude. And we're watching our peers, but also our adults through that process. So I liked how these are teachers who have this passion, and it's shared by being a role model. The other important thing about gratitude is that as we have these conversations, it's important to remember that it grows. That because it's something that we are learning, gratitude, much like intelligence, is not fixed, and there's always room for growth. One of the important areas we focus with children is, especially in modern day society, if we think about that fundamental needs chart, we are living in a time of extreme excess. If we took our children back to those fundamental needs, we can see how much excess we have in our lives. And excess can diminish our perspective of what we might need. And then it gives us a more limited view of gratitude. So as we are working through our conversations in each part of that cycle, keeping that in mind, that our growth, even as a role model, is that we have to recognize the excess around us and be able to find ways to open back up that view of gratitude by limiting some of that excess that we see. So as a family, conversation about needs and wants is really important, because this will help children find that gratitude work. And as we look at the next couple of examples of works that we can put out or do with children, you'll see how these conversations about needs and wants will open up those opportunities, open up their view of gratitude more to see that work. So we saw in our first plane that was sensorial. We're noticing and feeling things. Here's an action we could take for our first plane child. Share what you have. We saw that idea of excess. For a child in the first plane, they're focusing on themselves, and their possessions are paramount. They love their possessions. And so what we could do as a role model is guide them to share their bounty with others. The more tightly we hold on to our possessions, the more they can control us. And so releasing that grip a little bit and giving something away evokes gratitude. It opens that view. So a great simple action to take for a first plane child is to start a conversation, looking at your shelves, and decide, do I have a lot of something? And is there someone else who might enjoy it? And how can I share that? So that's a great first action step for for a child in the first plane to initiate that conversation. A second plane child, we saw that the work could lie within the fundamental needs, because we're not only asking them to feel and see it, we're asking them to think about it. And then again, think, how does that make me feel? So we're trying to leverage that cultural capital that they really are interested in. So action in a second plane of development, seek out people and places of knowledge. For the child that's focused on this mental independence and energized by cultural curiosities, visiting museums and historical sites, or even a person or family member who can share, that brings them back to that fundamental needs, thinking about differences and thinking about change over time. And that evokes a view of gratitude that opens up, kind of taking out some of all the excess happening around them and gives them a focus in the cultural interests, and then a focus to think morally how they feel about that. So it gets both the thinking and the feeling going. So being able, it's a simple action just to take them into a place or people. And it gives them that opportunity, that work of gratitude. In our third and fourth planes, we saw that we had this energy and this collectivism from wanting to belong and having role models, with the work needing to do something to express that appreciation. What does that look like? In action in these third and fourth planes is we would work to get children out and use that language of gratitude. So thinking about that plane of development, they have worked through to get to this final phase. They have built a language of gratitude. And it's a particular language because it allows them to build relationships. And so serving or volunteering regularly at the same establishment lends to the opportunity to establish bonds, and then gives them a way to practice that language and that conversation of gratitude. So you can kind of see the full cycle of how we initiate the conversation as we guide them, we model it, and now the child is in their own environment and they are leading that conversation with somebody else. So the cycle of that conversation begins anew, but now with the child and leading that conversation. And so, for example, here, students are working with elderly dementia patients who are working with Montessori materials for their memory. And they would go every week and they would build a relationship with each of these people, because that makes a genuine conversation, a genuine exchange in that language of gratitude. And then that adventure home and that lovely van that made my day is more conversation. So that conversation of that cycle begins again. And now we lead it in a new direction. So you can see how we're thinking and feeling and doing, and then reflecting about thinking and feeling. So we have this lovely cycle of work throughout these planes that we can use with children to help gain that gratitude. So to jumpstart some of that, some activities that we were working on in class is our 30-day calendar for gratitude, centering around, if we think about second plane and first plane children, so looking at being very specific and finding those topics to talk about, and being able to name those topics of gratitude, and then having them somewhere that they can reflect upon them again later. So we've had lots of different topics so far, some simple, as in what might be a book that you are grateful to have read, but those are also intertwined with that morality piece of the story that we read is about Bogota, and that there was only 19 libraries in a city of millions of people, and there weren't enough books for children. And so we get to have the conversation. Are books a need or are they a want? And how did this library serve? And is it different for our needs today versus then, or here versus there? And how do we feel about that? So we have a very concrete idea of something to be grateful for, but it's nestled inside of something much bigger. So it plays into both the first and the second plane of development work. You can jumpstart another conversation another way. We call these memory jars. This is another wonderful book that we read. And lucky me, memory jars are fun to make, but basically it's very simple in that it starts a conversation of what made you feel lucky today, because whatever that thing is, you are grateful for, and why. So it allows them to, again, connect their feelings and think about those feelings. And so simply taking a jar and putting in what made them feel lucky today is a great way to just jumpstart a conversation on gratitude. So while it seems like a complicated topic, it just comes down to having a good conversation. And so out of our work today, we were hoping to understand our child's potential. And hopefully we can see that potential is energy, and that energy is fueled by those stages of development and those sensitive periods. And we can encourage them to explore how they contribute to society if we just take into account those different developmental phases and the energy that they're feeling. Hopefully we also learned a little bit more about how we can model our human potential, because those passions that we have are what we are giving to society, and they make us feel a certain way. So children can watch that. So children are able to see that we have energy too, and that we put that with our work of gratitude, and this is how we achieve our potential, our contributions. And then last but not least, that we can guide each, ourselves and the child, and their potential with gratitude. So children who are working in gratitude feel that they're making a positive impact, and that confidence increases, and they feel supported, and then they become a part of their communities. And then that cycle continues again, and the conversation gets to continue again. And so I hope from our work today that you see a little more about the human potential and how we work together with students and how you work together with children to be able to foster that and build that in them and build an environment of gratitude with work to achieve each of those. And so that is my little spiel on the human potential and gratitude. I'm happy to answer any questions or thoughts, ideas. This is my favorite area of Montessori. This is what brought me to Montessori.
I can see your passion for it, and it's such a gift to have gotten to be part of this. I feel like I've learned so much, and I love how you linked it also to us as adults for modeling that gratitude. Thank you so much.
Absolutely, absolutely. If anybody has any questions or things that you want to ask later, feel free.
Lara, I had a question. I'm Sharuna. I wanted to know if you could recommend. I saw you had like 1 or 2 books. Our children range from 2 years to 15, and I think it would be wonderful for all of them. But I don't know if you could suggest anything more for me to read and children, and for me to read with the children.
Absolutely, I have books galore. We've been reading one a day, so at least up to now I have 17, and I have 30 total so far. So I have one for each day, so I can share my list of books as well.
All right. That would be great. Is that something you can email?
Yes, if you can place email in chat perhaps, and then
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, there's really wonderful, authentic children's literature that has these hidden messages almost that as a guide you can pull so much out of to teach gratitude. So I'll be sure to send that list. I'm not seeing chat as one of my options, so I don't know if we have chat turned on.
I think chat is disabled, but Sharuna, if you we can connect you with Laura, because I know Erin Wisnett has your email address, so we can
that would be great.
Perfect.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Yep, I'll be sure to get you that.
Thank you, Risa. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate everyone.
Sorry, Lara, I have one other question. I loved the activity with the basil, with the plants. I think that's, are there other examples like that are sensory and have that kind of immediate feedback?
So gardening in general is a wonderful work in terms of sensorial. So any type of gardening that a child can do, even if it's with flowers or flower arranging, are those experiences. And taking flower arranging that we might do in a Montessori classroom a step further as a delivery, a gift for someone, that then takes that sensorial experience and connects it to gratitude. And so the child can have the sensorial work, they arrange, they make something beautiful, and then they give that to someone else. So that idea, that act of giving.
Excellent. Yeah, that's a great idea. I was just thinking one could collect flowers and bring them to neighbors or to like a nursing home. It's a wonderful idea. Thank you.
Absolutely. And we do, there's other little things, so many little things in terms of home improvement. To help paint something is always a moment. It's an experience, especially if it's something like they're painting their rooms or they're painting their shelf or they're painting something in their workspace, right? So that's always another moment of experience with lots of sensorial and gratitude because of the end product. And again, it's very almost self-serving in some ways because that's the stage that they're in when they're younger. And so it's very helpful.
Fantastic. Thank you, Lara. Thank you.
So I thank everyone for listening to my passion, my Montessori passion.
Miss Laura, I also had a question.
Yeah.
I wanted to understand more about leveraging the cultural capital you were talking about.
Yeah.
How does it tie into gratitude and, how can you actually do it, in practice?
Yeah. So a lot of times it comes up very natural in conversation because children, when they're looking culturally across the globe and they're studying different cultures and they're understanding how this global perspective comes together, how we come together. And they often generate a lot of questions about what they might be grateful for. Is it what someone else would be grateful for somewhere else, somewhere around the world? Or is it something that someone would have been grateful for 2 centuries ago? Is it something that an ancient civilization would have been grateful for? And they're making those connections. And then from there, they're using moral judgment. So they're trying to decide, do they feel comfortable with that? Do they feel like they want to take some action with that? Do they feel like they would want to change something about that? So they're using that idea of just initially noticing and feeling something about it, then taking it to a bigger thought process, almost comparing and seeing similarities and differences so that then they can make a moral judgment. They think it's fair or not fair.
I see, yeah. I guess when they're talking about history, I think that's when you can, you really use that conversation, right?
It is, yeah. And especially with people too. I find that we can teach history, but oftentimes people are one of our best resources in generating that ability to think about similarities and differences, meeting someone new who might have a different perspective and interacting with that person too. So a lot of times we might have a family member, a grandma, who tells us a story and we think, ooh, that's different. I didn't have that, and I'm not really grateful for that now. I don't think about it ever. Should I think about being grateful for that? My grandma was grateful for that, and they start to really make those questions. They ask a lot of questions, and as a conversation, we get the joy of kind of guiding them through and letting them arrive at what they feel like is the most moral or just answer in that situation.
Right, yeah, that's true. Thank you, Miss Laura.
Yeah.
Laura, I'm curious how you start those conversations. If you'd be willing to, I don't know, talk us through. I'm curious how you start them and how much prompting is necessary, or if it's really the first conversation that requires a lot of prompting, and then you find that the students naturally start going down that path of logic on their own later.
So to initiate the conversation, the first thing I always ask is, tell me about that experience, especially for a second plane child who might be encountering a person and talking with them that might have a different perspective or point of view, or might read something in a book and go, I don't like this, or I'm not comfortable with this. So they have the feeling, and that's the first thing I always ask them is, tell me what you thought about that experience. Tell me what you thought about this encounter, or tell me what you thought about when you read this. And I let them get that initial first thought out to me so I can understand where their feelings are at. And then from there, it's a lot of good wait time because it is a series of questions, but they're thinking mode, so they're not going to answer right away. So it does require a lot of think time on the child's part to say, okay, so you felt uncomfortable that the boy had to cut his grandma's toenails. This is what we were reading in a book the other day. You felt uncomfortable about that. I was like, you wouldn't cut your grandma's toenails. Is that what you mean? And he was like, well, think, 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 think. And eventually said, I wouldn't want to cut my grandma's toenails, but she was telling really good stories when we were cutting toenails. Okay. So you're grateful for the stories, but what's different about how maybe you hear these stories versus how they were heard during this time period while they were cutting grandma's toenails? So they're just seeing those different scenarios and those different situations, but they're finding that gratitude in it. So they got stuck on something that was very different, caring for an elder, and caring for an elder is a unique to every culture and how we do that. So they get this idea, this cultural perspective, but at the same time can also find that gratitude in there. And it is an art of a series of questions. And they're really always based on what the child replies with. We had a very similar one today about the libraries and not having access to libraries in a large city, and whether we thought that was fair or not. But the character in the person in biography in our story was collecting books from the trash and then bringing them to his house and building his own library. Every Saturday, the children could come to his library. So there was a lot of questions about morality. Books that are in the trash. Why do we bring them in the house? Should we even do that? What time period is this? And why is there not access to books? And do we think that that's fair? And so that brings up that morality piece as well, and cultural differences.
It makes me want to join the classes so I can hear these lovely conversations.
They often surprise me, because those questions pop up. But again, I think that's why as a guide and as a parent, it's just important to always keep in the back of our minds that the energy that's feeding them and why those questions are being asked. That at the root of it, they're trying to figure out something morally, and they're trying to make a decision about that. And they want to think about how that feels. And then gradually those thoughts turn into passions, and those passions turn into the actions, the last part of that conversation. Which is lovely to see.
Do we have... Sorry, I was just asking, do we have resource to, like, as for grown-ups, as parents probably, to kind of harness these opportunities? Because I find that my son likes to talk a lot on the things he's experiencing, right? And so many times I'm just like busy, so sometimes I tend to rush through it, and I think I'm missing out opportunities. So like experiences and about people, and that's he asks questions on that. So I when you're talking about the books you're reading on, he's reading a similar one at home on a cat, and how a homeless man gets a cat, and he was just discussing that with me, and he was saying so he's earning more money because of the cat, and just little bits, things like that. So just I think when you're saying, I'm thinking, oh yeah, I can kind of ask questions there and make him feel like
yes, and that is the perfect opportunity. He was telling me about that story today, and I was very intrigued by it because I hadn't heard of it before. But yeah, exactly what he started to tell me about the story, and I initiated the conversation with, well, how do you feel about his experience? That was the first question I asked, is how do you feel about his experience? And then how do you think he feels about his experience? Because just because we might feel a certain way about it doesn't mean that it affects the person the same way. So those are the first two questions I'll always try to initiate is, how do you feel about it? And how do you think the character or the person feels about it.
Mm-hmm.
So those were always my first two questions.
Yeah, I think those are easy to remember as well. Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And from there, usually the children will take it away. It's just kind of more of a wait time because they're thinking. That's the phase they're in. So they want to think about it.
Right. And just to understand how gratitude comes from there is them understanding what they have and probably what they have, don't have, probably what they can see in the story.
Yes, yeah. It brings their attention to what they have that maybe that might be something others don't have. And initially, a book may not seem like something you should feel grateful for, right? Because we go back to that idea of we have excess amounts of it. All the time. We have as many books as we want. We want a book, we order it on Amazon, or we go to the library, right? We can order it on our Kindle. We have access to books. So our gratitude kind of wanes in that. Just something simple like a book. But that experience then reminds them, wait a minute, not everybody has books. Not like I have books. So it reminds them to be a little more grateful for what they have in their environment. And it also then takes it back to the idea of, well, maybe you have excess. What can I do with my excess? So they can reignite their gratitude for books and then spread that gratitude through generosity by giving it to someone else. So it kind of starts that cycle of ideas.
Yeah, makes sense. Absolutely. Thanks for that.
Absolutely.
My daughter's in your class, Lara. It's Fatima's mum here.
Yeah.
I just like to say thank you to you for explaining how the developmental stages tie in and the importance of modelling gratitude so that the child can learn it. Like you said, it's something that they can learn and implement and in turn make a positive impact on the world. And I've seen that firsthand with my daughter, who Lara's been teaching, as I said. She's been able to establish bonds, even in a virtual environment, which she really values. And I can see that in her interaction with her peers and with Lara. And it's due to the opportunities you've created also within that environment for them to foster gratitude. And, I'd like to thank you for that.
Oh, you're most welcome. I think when you think about gratitude, you can also see how it opens up an area of trust. It kind of adds this common ground for everyone to have this open area of trust. So
yes.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
I would like to thank for that as well, definitely. Yeah.
You're most welcome. I enjoy every second of it. So it's my favorite parts of the day is when we get to have these types of conversations. Thank everyone for joining me tonight and hearing my joys.
Thank you so much for everyone for joining, and thank you, Lara, so much for sharing with us. We are deeply appreciative for the work you do and for the opportunity to work with you. And thank you all for joining us. And we hope to have more presentations in the future, and definitely, if Lara is willing, to ask her to grace us again with some more of her knowledge.
Absolutely.
Have a good evening, everyone.
Right. Enjoy your night. I'll see everybody tomorrow for most of us. Bye.
Hi, everyone.
See you later.
Thank you.